This is the story of Cubert. Cubert found himself in a strange world made of blocks. Well, for the most part. He figured out that he must be a ghost, as he can fly through walls and no one can see his true form. The only thing proving his existence is his name in the air. After wandering the seemingly infinite terrain for countless days, Cubert discovered that he can materialize blocks out of nowhere and build things. But this world, while peaceful, is cruel, and everything he builds fades out of existence eventually, as if the world can't remember that he ever was there. Out of desperation, Cubert built an altar and started praying to the devs. He sacrificed everything he could, but the devs didn't seem to care at all. He tried again and again, but every time his buildings kept disappearing. Until one day, he built a small well in the desert to get some water. And the well just stayed there, remaining visible even from afar. Finally, it seems the devs had listened to his prayers. But what is the purpose of building anything if Cubert is all alone in an infinite world? So, still in his ghostly form, he kept praying to the devs to get him some companions. And soon enough, more ghosts started arriving in this strange world. Curiously, many of them had the same weird name, quanturmdoelvloper, whatever that means. Together, they found a nice plateau in the mountains. It looked so out of place that clearly the devs must have wanted them to settle there. So they started building a little village. They named it the Republic. But due to a small mistake on the sign, everyone started calling it just their public. However, they didn't all want to work together. The group split and their private was founded. But bridges were built in an effort to reunite people, and nowadays their private is nothing more than a sign in the snow. As the village grew, it also got the first church to pray to the devs. And Cubert started working on a large dragon statue to further impress the devs. They had many things to pray for. Some people just prayed for some new building blocks, while others started praying to get back their bodily form instead of living as a ghost. And of course, there were heretics who just left ominous signs in the landscape. As people started to pray for different things, it became obvious that more churches were needed. Or maybe the churches were just a disguise for something else? Well, we will never know their true intentions for building these. It took some time, but eventually the devs listened and gave them the ability to walk. But of course, as a cruel punishment for not impressing them enough, the devs made it so that it sometimes just teleports you to a random cave when you lazily walk around instead of staying still and building. At least that's how Cubert and his companions interpreted the events. That's why they went into the desert and started building a great pyramid with hidden treasure underneath. To prevent thieves from stealing the treasure, they hid it behind a big maze and a small jump and run, such that only the most skillful could enter the treasure room, which of course contains another church to pray to the devs. And it seems they were successful. The devs were impressed and removed the cruel teleportation punishment from the world. And Cubert and his companions lived happily ever after. Alright, and now I'll tell you the same story from the perspective of myself, the developer of the game. It begins after making my last video. As our fictional character Cubert described, the game was still in an unplayable state. You could only fly and there was no world saving, so everything just disappeared as it went out of render distance. I wanted to work on this way sooner, but I was a bit overwhelmed by making a world saving system that is stable over multiple versions. My goal was to keep the first ever world that I make playable forever, without my buildings getting buried by a mountain or something like that. But during the making of my last video, I made this nice background scene and I was sad that I couldn't save it with the current game. So I knew that I had to bite the bullet and work on world saving as soon as possible. In a world as big as Cubyz, it is impossible to store all of the chunks inside of the render distance. This is what Minecraft does, but it only works because Minecraft has a fairly small render distance with a limited build height. Because of that, I decided to only store the 3x3x3 chunks that surround an edited block. Additionally, I'm storing the surrounding height and biome map to make sure that changes to world generation only have a small impact. This isn't perfect, but I think it's good enough for now, and of course some breakage is to be expected with this kind of system. The file size is pretty good though. The world shown in the background is still less than 100 megabytes, and as you can see it already contains some pretty large structures. For comparison, I created a new Minecraft world and walked in one direction for a few minutes, and it already took around 50 megabytes. After saving was implemented, Cubert discovered that it's kind of lonely, and honestly building with other people can be much more fun than just building on your own in a private world. Implementing multiplayer was actually quite simple. Basically, I just had to add the invite button and some extra server functionality. But the rest was already set up by my past self. After that, I decided to start playing the game in voice chat on our Discord server. It's really fun, we had like over 10 play sessions so far, and I will definitely continue doing it. If you want to join me, then you just need to join the Discord server. I won't play every day, but when I do, I'll make sure to ping everyone who is interested. The map that is shown in the Story of Cubert comes from these play sessions. But of course, the story is entirely fictional. There's no one praying to the devs here, and that's a good thing. One thing that wasn't fictional though is the fact that often players join with the name quanturmdoelvloper, which is the default name and people just forget to change it all the time. And yes, I left it misspelled on purpose because I thought it would be funny. One thing I really enjoy about the game so far is that the render distance really makes me want to build large structures. For example, the bridge shown in the story is 1000 blocks long. I probably should add a faster building option in the future though. It took me quite a while to build this thing. But then again, that dragon probably took way longer and faster block placement wouldn't have helped, so I guess it's not too bad. Back to the story, Cubert and his companions prayed for new blocks and a bodily form. At this point I have to give the credit to Carrie and GeraForever. Carrie added new blocks and improved textures throughout the past month, and I think she makes great textures. We are lucky to have someone like Carrie working on Cubyz. And GeraForever added a simple collision detection system. It was kind of buggy though, and I had to step in to fix some of the bugs. However, the bug mentioned in the story that randomly teleports you is actually one I added myself while fixing some of the other collision issues. And of course, it was added accidentally and not as a punishment to the players. I also went through 2 more rewrites of the collision system. To make the collision smoother, I tried external springs and internal springs. Now there are some other oddities in the story. These oddities just come from the fact that this map was built without any planning and I had to try and make a story around that. For example, the churches were built by Weltspear, who for some reason put military bunkers underneath most of them. And well, I guess people also like placing random neon signs everywhere. The pyramid mentioned in the story could actually be considered the first adventure map, and I extracted it from the rest of the map and published it on the Discord server. I'm not sure how fun it is. Honestly, there are some evil sections in there that make it easy to lose progress. Like every time you fail at the jump and run, you need to go all the way back to the maze. and the treasure room might also not be what you expect. But overall, it's a proof of concept that the game could now have basic adventure maps with jump and runs, mazes, and I guess if you're creative, you could even do simple traps using blocks without collision. These blocks could be easily added using the per world assets. Now of course there are some other things that changed that Cubert couldn't have known about. Being a fictional in-game character, he cannot experience lag or performance issues. After the past video, I decided to render the inside of leaf blocks. This brought down performance by a great amount, but I knew that I had to do it at some point because the previous leaves just looked terrible. But I still had some performance improvement ideas up my sleeve, and for that I decided to transition to GPU-driven rendering. GPU-driven rendering basically means that the GPU schedules the draw calls using multi-draw indirect commands and compute shaders to fill the command buffers. I did this in my first coding livestream. As expected, it was a rough first stream. Not only did I end up debugging half the time, I also managed to freeze my computer midstream and had to restart it. Additionally, I discovered that streaming while working on improving the rendering performance is not a good idea. Streaming introduces a lot of lag that makes it impossible to see performance changes. The day after the stream, I discovered that what I did actually made performance slightly worse, but it doesn't matter since GPU-driven rendering opens up some other optimization ideas. For example, raster occlusion culling is really great. Essentially, you check the chunk's bounding box against the depth buffer and only draw it when at least a single pixel of the bounding box would be visible. This reduces the number of triangles drawn by a lot, and Cubyz is somewhat vertex bound, so in extreme cases like this forest, it increased FPS by a factor of 3. Now, I did already have a CPU-based heuristic for occlusion culling, inspired by the one used in the Minecraft Pocket Edition. Without this, the impact would have been even greater. Apart from that, I also had to make meshing faster, since there were lag spikes when placing blocks in a forest. And while I was at it, I also made terrain generation and lighting faster as well. I also tried to add greedy meshing, but I had mixed results. I used a variant that tries to merge even faces of different light level and textures to make it more future-proof when I add random texture variants and rotations. Overall, this added extra work to the fragment shader to fetch the texture index and interpolate the lighting. And these just were not outweighed by the performance gain from greedy meshing. I think there's just too much overdraw when rendering all internal leaf faces. After losing greedy meshing, I decided to just reduce the leaf faces by making leaves opaque in LOD and limiting transparent leaves to a few layers. And luckily, even if it only shows the first 2 layers, it's still pretty difficult to see the difference. Anyways, that's all the changes for this video. As you saw, I tried something new with the little story in the beginning. Tell me if you liked it and if I should keep going in that direction. It certainly was fun to write for me. Before you go, I also want to quickly remind you that the game is open source and contributions are welcome. And of course, don't forget to join the Discord server and enter one of those multiplayer sessions to leave your mark in this world. Goodbye.